Huzzah, Rangers!
Howard.
It makes me giggle every single time I see that intro video. For the audio listeners, you have to go see the video if you haven't seen it. It's Andrew Quattrin being an absolute madman. But I just wanted to go ahead and say that we've got a very, very special interview this time around. He is our New Orleans correspondent, looking fantastic in his New Orleans jersey. This is Rob, the Hammerschmidt. Rob, how the hell are you?
I'm well, Phil. How are you? It's a thank you for
Excellent.
having me. It's always something I look forward to. I'm excited to join the
Welcome.
show because you do a heck of a job and keep
Appreciate
yourself
that.
busy with the pod.
Yeah, man, always doing stuff with the podcast. I'm working about 56 hours a week now, but everything else is devoted to the podcast at this point because it's preseason, baby. Like, we've got so much going on that we can talk about from a
Right.
Jacks Rangers perspective or a Free Jacks perspective. So we got to get that content out there. So I always appreciate our correspondents coming on here and updating us about their individual
It's hard.
team. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's hard not to get jacked up, isn't it?
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Absolutely. We were just talking off the air about the kits because it's Kitmas once again for MLR. The Free Jacks are always lucky. The fans get a sneak preview prior to Kitmas. It seems like we saw ours about a month ago. But I wanted to ask you straight up, like, what do you think is the best home and away jersey this time around?
I'm an absolute and complete homer. I'm gonna admit it, acknowledge it. I love both Chicago and NOLA. Look, here's what I love about him. We were talking about this off air, and we're going to talk about it in the Rugby Rant next week, next week's episode. I love the fact that for their standard kits, and NOLA's done this for the last couple of years, you're going to be able to buy a kit and you're going to be able to wear at least one of the jerseys. You're going to be able to go back here in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and you're going to get the same style of kit. You're going to get the quarters for that, golden and white quarters. There's a slight variation this year, and it's a stock, just a standard, white and gold without the diagonal stripes through it, and then you're going to get the Mardi Gras, right? And is there a little different variation on it? Yes, the Mardi Gras has a collar this year, which I really think is sharp. But the bottom line is, you don't feel compelled to spend $130 on a jersey, 2 jerseys, because if you bought one, you're going to fit in to the, with everybody else. You can spend the money on that vintage jersey or that military jersey or whatever else they're putting out that's unique. And for the Hounds, I love the houndstooth. I have both of those jerseys actually from last year, and I love the houndstooth trim. And it was just enough of a flair, the green collar as well. Just enough of a flair for me to say, I will think I think I'll get one of those.
For sure. I first saw that away kit. I think it's the all forest green one that you're referring to with the houndstooth on there. I initially said, boring with that one, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. It's really, really clean. I think they do a fantastic job, especially with the home jersey. They're kind of doing the whole hoops thing as well, which is the, famous by the Free Jacks in this league. So, yeah.
Well, here's a little, here's one for you. What most people don't know is actually those 2 jerseys. Well, the forest green, that was supposed to be their home jersey last year.
Okay. Yep. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, but it was too close to what ATL wanted to do, and so they were told they couldn't do it. So that's why they did the special edition versions.
How about that? Now, interestingly enough, obviously Atlanta going to LA now, moving that franchise over, so they're able to bring that in this year as their away kit. So very, very interesting stuff for sure. You mentioned the Rugby Rant a moment ago. I wanted you to take a moment and tell us how everything's going with the Rugby Rant, your show.
Yeah, we took about a month and a half off after the World Cup. We were running an episode a week, sometimes 2, with some of our Run Past Quick episodes. So. We were going pretty hot, and we just needed to take a little breather and a break. And so we're back at it. Last night we just taped our 158, episode 158.
Wow, okay.
We're talking, and we brought in John Cullen, who was a former Hound, played for the Hounds last year, was a Cap USA player a little ways back, but brought him on to talk about the newest team in the league, the Charlotte Hawks. And just, what he thought of that, his take and his thoughts on the structure behind that franchise, if you will.
Yeah.
So that should be rolling out, I think, Friday this week, Thursday or Friday this week. I just got to get to the edit.
Yeah, man. I definitely want to tune into that because, I'm sure people hear my accent and go, not exactly a New Englander. And that's true. I've been up 14 years now. We're in
Yeah.
2024. So
You're
I've
a
been up
South
here
Carolina guy, aren't you?
Well, North Carolina, right near Charlotte, but right on the border. So I went to the University of South Carolina, go
Yeah.
Gamecocks, obviously, and played rugby there. But I'm a Carolina boy through and through. I've always supported the Charlotte team since I was a little kid. Moving up here, I pay attention to the Bruins and the Red Sox, all that sort of stuff as well. But I'm always got one eye on seeing what the Charlotte sports scenes do. So it's a very big deal for me to have a Charlotte franchise. And we talked about this last year, if you recall. We talked about how you're a NOLA fan since the very beginning of the league, but you're a Chicago guy, so you've kind of got divided loyalties a little bit, and I'm going to be experiencing that with Charlotte coming into the fold. Just what's your overall thought? I mean, it's been a wacky offseason, right, Rob? I mean, we've lost two franchises that folded, unexpectedly to a certain extent. We've got one team moving from Atlanta to LA. We've got Miami, this new franchise, and then out of nowhere, Charlotte smacks us in the face, is going to change the schedule. Just what's your overall thought on Charlotte, North Carolina coming into the league?
I think it depends. For me, it depends upon the lens through which I'm looking at the situation. If you're looking at it from an MLR situation, it's not a bad fit. I just think the execution was poor. If this would have been done and announced in July, like at the final or in conjunction with the draft, I think it would have come off really well. And certainly on the heels of, the folding of two franchises, particularly Rugby New York, I think it would have gone over real well, because with the ideal with the Hawks, you probably could have picked up a guy like Ben Benasso. You could have picked up a guy like Butcher. You maybe could have talked to a Brakely and say, hey, can you give us one more year where we get this franchise off the ground? We could use your leadership, your experience, your veteran, psychology to get us going with these young guys. The problem was it was real late in the game. And so, here's where I struggle. So why is that? Well, was that a business decision? Or was that something where individual owners kind of were forced into it? I believe that individual owners want the World Cup, right? They want World Cup pools. And therefore it's my belief that because they want World Cup pools, they had to play nice with World Rugby, because that's the entity that is that is putting the money behind the Hawks. So, what's the long-term strategy to make the Hawks, financially sound, without World Rugby's input? And World Rugby's a fickle organization. If the U.S. fails to qualify in 2027, God forbid, will that money still be there? Will the Hawks still be around? Does the league have to deal with yet another folding franchise? So I just think that those are the things that give me pause. I like the idea behind the Hawks. I think it's the right way to go. And oh, by the way, this was something I talk about this in the Rugby Rant this week in a little bit more depth, but this wasn't a new idea this week or last month. This was something that was talked about, about a year ago on the heels of missing out on the Rugby World Cup in 2023. This was on the table. So not something new, but just how it came about and evolved. It was rather late in the game, and that's what gave me pause. I think they could have done like an exhibition season, but I don't think World Rugby wanted that, so they had to play nice.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and it's interesting from, coming up as like a Charlotte, having lived in that area most of my life, that sports market is very fickle. I mean, the Panthers have had a bad go of it for about 2 years now, and that stadium is empty, man. Like the thing is like with Charlotte, you need to have a contender for people to be interested. I mean, it might be something like a novelty at first, like, oh, rugby's coming, just like kind of Charlotte FC is experiencing that at Bank of America Stadium. They're filling that place for an MLS franchise, but we'll see how long that lasts. If the team doesn't perform well, I'm a little concerned about it. And then plus it's a development squad, right? We're anticipating maybe like
they're going to go through their struggles.
Yeah, absolutely they will. I mean, they're going to get their butt kicked. I think that's fair to say, and that's going to help them get better. Iron sharpens iron. So, hopefully that franchise will be able to find their feet. And this is something that I will make an argument that if you don't have like a second team that you kind of follow, if you've got maybe there's some neutrals out there that are watching this. I don't know why you would. It's a Free Jacks podcast, but if there's neutrals out there, pick Charlotte as your team. If you support USA Rugby, Charlotte is your team. And if you've already got a team, Charlotte can be your second team if you care about USA Rugby, because we're bringing these youth guys through. The Hawks, if you will, the Falcons, these younger guys that could eventually make their way onto an Eagles roster to help them get game time and stuff like that right now. Throw them into the fire and see how well they do and stuff like that. Get them battle tested. So I think it's a strong argument that Charlotte should be everybody's second favorite team. But I just wonder about that sports market and how well that will do long term. And if the money dries up, who knows what's going to happen there. But
well, I think the key is to kind of look around the league. I mean, there's enough. We're in year what, 6 now? Seven, I guess would be. And I think there's an opportunity, and they're smart guys. Scott Lawrence certainly, while probably not going to be steering the ship, he's too busy with the Eagles. Certainly get him his eye on things, and he's been around ATL, and some of the other people that I've heard are going to be tabbed to be involved have been around the league as well. And here's the deal: what they have the advantage of is they can look at the other teams and find out what do other teams do well, what do other teams not do so well, and how do we capitalize this. And all they need to do is look at the Free Jacks, and the Free Jacks. Here's what they do well. They've made Fort Quincy a centerpiece for the community, right? It's not just a rugby place that you go, 8 times a year. It's someplace that the community goes for movie nights, for beer fest, for all concerts, these events. Yeah. And we play rugby there as well. So why don't you come out to that? Yeah. And I think that's just smart marketing. So, I don't know whether that's Mags or whom, but it's a smart way to go.
As we know, Mags is a super genius, and from the very beginning, it's been community based, and that has, it took a little while to get going, but it's paid dividends for sure, and it's very, very successful. It's a successful model that we're seeing other teams now get on board with, or last season they started to try it out, and because it works. But let's move over from Charlotte, and I am shifting my minor support to Charlotte. I mean, I think everybody should, if you care about USA Rugby, support them at least a little bit. Very interested to see, the branding and stuff like that when that comes out. It better not be red, white, and blue, because I will be pissed. But I mean, it makes sense, though, right? I mean, it's the Hawks, it's the minor league USA Rugby, whatever. But yeah, let's please don't go red, white, and blue. God. What's your opinion of speaking of branding? What is your opinion of the new LA team's logo and name?
Oh man, I don't like the name. I think it's too generic. Kind of almost like what Rugby United New York was. It sounded more of a soccer organization than it did a rugby organization. And I realize that RFC is something that is very commonplace with a lot of rugby clubs. I mean, Chicago Blaze Rugby Club, my own club, my home club, had the same thing. But we've kind of moved away from the RFC component now, and it's just Chicago Blaze Rugby. That part I don't like. The Acorn I had a hard time with until somebody explained to me, or I read, or maybe it was their branding identity that said that, acorn trees are very, popular around, oak trees are very popular around there. And that's a native species. Okay. I get it. I think the execution of that could have been a little bit better. I love the colors. It's new, it's fresh, it's vibrant. It's something that, the league doesn't have, you mentioned red, white, and blue, but this is, very vibrant. So I like some of the elements. I think some other elements could have been done a little bit better. Their kits are unique. I think they could have had, the waves are supposed to be that coastal, sea wave. I think they could have made that a little bit more obvious for the common viewer.
Yep. I think the name is too long. It's not original. I mean, it's not original and also completely soulless. Like, Chicago Hounds, New England Free Jacks, Utah Warriors. Let's just go with that. That model works, right? Like, if you're just some unknown thing, you don't have a mascot, it's not very clear. You're an oak tree. What? Like, come on, man. And also the uniforms are a bit bland for my taste, and by the way, the logo, it also looks like something else. We're calling them the LA Dickheads here. That will forever be their name as far as I'm concerned. As long as I, continue to draw breath, that will be what I call them. But yeah, I mean, it's just poor execution, man. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. moving over, let's talk about MLR 2023. We're going to rewind
Yeah.
back to them, and of course, you're wearing the gold kit right now. You know, you have some affiliation with the Hounds as well. You do sideline reporting for them, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I know that you're a big gold guy and have been since the very
Mhm.
beginning. So I wanted to ask you about what's your overall impressions of their season from last year.
Well, listen. I call Ryan Fitzgerald, the GM, a personal friend. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, I just had a nice chat with him today, and we touch base pretty frequently. And I think by all accounts, and Ryan would admit this, I mean, he's a Marine through and through, and he acknowledges and mistakes, and acknowledges where improvement needs to be made. And I think he would
Mhm.
acknowledge that their season was not what they wanted it to be.
Right.
They failed to make the playoffs, and that is and continues to be a goal. They have never made the playoffs, and I think that eats away at Ryan. I think it's something that he looks to turn around year in and year out. So I think from that perspective, it was a bit of a struggle, especially given the roster. They had some really nice additions to the roster.
Mhm.
Expectations it would have been a better outcome. I think
Mhm.
they had higher expectations for Kane Thompson and what they believed he could do as a head coach.
Right.
From everybody I've talked to down there, and I know Kane, I've talked to him a couple different times, and from my conversations with Ryan, Kane stepped down. I mean, he stepped away from the head coaching role. He was man enough to acknowledge that it was not his strong suit. He wanted to get back to what he does well,
Mhm.
and that's being a forwards coach. That's being
Yep.
in charge of the defense. So, kudos to him for willing to step back and kind of, come away from the head coaching role, look introspectively at what, his strengths and weaknesses are. I mean, how often do you see a coach, go from head coach back down to, an
Super
assistant coach in
rare.
any sport?
Yeah.
In that regard, I think they have some work and improvement to do upon last year. Let's look forward to 2024.
Absolutely, that's a great way to put it, man. I mean, we talked about this, and I know that I think you're in education, but I think you do a
Yeah.
fantastic job as a car salesman because you had me ready to buy the NOLA Gold last season. You know, heading into the regular season, I had them in the playoffs. You know, they had some great additions as you were mentioning, but they just couldn't get it together. And it's just one of those things like, when are they gonna make the playoffs? I mean, that is the big monkey on their back, man, and
Yeah.
it's of course, at some point, it's gonna happen. It might be this year unless MLR changes the playoff
The
structure
format.
again. Right, right. So 8 teams are gonna get in out of 12, and we assume that
Yeah.
Charlotte won't get in because they're a development team, and there's some other teams like the new franchises that might struggle. So you would think that the Mola Gold would find their way into the playoffs, but I mean, we'll have to see how it shakes out. You're mentioning a very, very interesting dynamic that I was going to bring up next here. Head coach Kane Thompson has now transitioned into an assistant coach for the forwards and the defensive role. And NOLA is bringing in Corey Brown. Any
Yeah.
concern about Kane being retained? It is such a rare thing. Normally, they clear out the coaching staffs when there's a change like that. Assistant coaches leave. Any concerns?
Not one.
Okay.
Not one.
Wow.
Absolutely not. And again, I think it stems from the fact that it wasn't that he was asked to take us, a second seat,
Mhm.
asked to take a step back from that role, that he did it himself. It's something
Right.
he asked to do. So I think, again, he recognized, what his strengths are, and wanted to play into those strengths rather than, again, cause, more turmoil,
Mhm.
for the team, or struggle, I should say, with the team.
Yep.
Um, you know, the Corey Brown, we know the Brown pedigree in New Zealand, obviously,
Yep.
Otago.
Yep.
He's done it. Here's what I like about him. He's had a lot of variety in his background. He's worked in France. He's worked in Italy. He's worked in Georgia. He's been at Connacht. He's been at the Sunwolves. So
Mhm.
he's, on one hand, he's gone to a lot of different places. On the other hand, he's got to work with a lot of different varieties and styles of rugby, and kind of take those in and figure out what's going to work best for the NOLA Gold based upon their personnel.
Mhm.
And I do think they have pretty strong personnel. It's just a matter of being able to put those pieces together. Somebody with his experience and pedigree and acumen is, I think, the perfect person to do that. And it's not with the, goes without saying, they've got a Nicola, a and I haven't met him yet. Nicholas Guignonin, and I'm butchering it because it's a French name. It's spelled Godignon, Guignon,
Okay.
who's a scrum and breakdown coach. So they've got a specialist working with the scrum, trying to improve that area. They already have a very good line out, clinical to some degree, especially with Pat O'Toole throwing that ball in and Cam Dolan, dictating the pace of that part of the set piece. But the scrum is important, and they're going to throw in a scrum coach that I think will make some significant improvements to that front row and to that scrum.
Rob, I can tell that you've been doing this for a while because you're answering questions I haven't even asked yet. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Bozo, who's the king of the comments. He's got some interesting takes here. NOLA had some phenomenal talent. East was terrible. He's referring to last year. Terrible for them to not have made it. He also brings up that the Free Jacks had more wins than the Gold and the Hounds combined last year. Total class from Kane Thompson. That's a team player move. They'll be fine. And was there one more? No, that was it. So, yeah, I mean, Bozo's bringing up some interesting things here. NOLA should have been better last season. They had really good talent, as we know. I had predicted them to make the playoffs. They unfortunately didn't. And now, with the new structure, 8 teams make it if it doesn't get changed. So you have to assume that NOLA will be in that mix. And you're talking about, coaching changes, bringing in a guy in Corey Brown, who's very, very experienced. He's been all over the world. I bet TK knows this guy because Otago is not exactly a big place.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
New Zealand's not exactly a big place.
That's true.
The rugby circles in the United States are pretty small. And then,
right.
Obviously everybody is involved in rugby in New Zealand, but with only 4 million people, those circles don't run too far from one another.
Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to have TK on the show and ask him about Corey Brown. I mean, this will be his first season, obviously. And, one guy that comes to mind about his first season last year that was so successful is Josh Sims at DC. Obviously, he's now in Italy, as we call it in North Carolina, Italy. But yeah, he's over there. He's got himself a promotion working with one of the URC teams, I believe, over there in Italy. But he did a fantastic job in transforming a team that was, let's be honest, a doormat in this league for the most part in Old Glory DC, and got them into the playoffs, got their first playoff win in history. I wonder if Corey Brown will have that type of impact in his first year. We'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the collegiate draft. Now, this is something that NOLA takes very, very seriously, probably the most in the entire league, about how they scout these guys and really focus on the collegiate draft. They want to bring in excellent American and Canadian talent, which is very commendable, of course. Who's some of these guys that they've picked up?
So one of them is near and dear to my heart, Kian Darling. So let me back up just a moment.
Sure.
And let me just say, to your point, and again, going back to Fitz, knowing him, he loves the draft. And first of all, he's a player development guy. He was with the Saints. And for him, the draft is like Christmas. He absolutely thrives in a draft. And so last year, they actually only had 1 pick in the draft. Okay. Out of all, what it was at 30, was it 36?
30 something.
Yeah, something like that. 36. They only had 1 pick in the draft, and I think it was his second rounder. And he ended up with, I think, 3 first-round picks.
Love it, man. Love it.
Now we know that, a lot of teams throw those picks around fairly easily. And quite frankly, let's be candid, in the draft, probably each draft you can count on at the most 3 draftees making significant contributions to to their respective teams.
Right.
And that's probably at the most. Sam Gala was the guy last year. But by and large,
Dallas team,
Yeah.
So
yeah, but he still made his way into the Eagles roster, so he did something right.
Right.
So Kian Darling, like I said, near and dear to my heart. Why? Lindenwood University. He is a close friend of my son who played at Lindenwood. I've met him. I know him. I've met his dad, during graduation, and he is a great kid. He's kind of the prototypical back rower that Fitz looks for. And that's just a guy and Fitz, this direct quote, he'll run through a wall for you. And much in the model of he's bigger, taller than Andrew Guerra. So Kian's a great kid. Kian is had some niggling injuries that he's had taken care of since in his back. Will he be, figuring into that game day roster from day one? Probably not. And speaking with Fitz, he believes that, he is going to have to get him into camp. So it's possible. But he believes that he's a guy that can make a solid contribution to this Gold team this season. So that's one of those draftees. And then the other one is Julian Roberts from Life University. We know Life University's pedigree. He's a fly half by trade, but has played, at 15, and he's played, kind of utility throughout the backs. He's being branded as a wing, but as in talking with Fitz, he believes that he'll, it's somebody that can kind of learn under Rodney for a season, 2 seasons, maybe 3, and kind of find his way into that 10 shirt on occasion, maybe find his way into the 15 shirt to give him an opportunity to kind of see the field a little bit more, see space, see what's happening on the MLR pitch with the speed and intensity that it brings, and make those adjustments as he continues to develop. So, that's a guy that Fitz believes he has the step, he has the skills, he has the silkiness, the vision that he can be a guy that the NOLA Gold will lean on, moving forward as he develops. And then Gabe Mohinga actually was the other draftee, and he actually was traded away. And sorry, I don't know this off the top of my head. I want to say it was Dallas, or maybe, he was traded away to another team, and I forgot,
no worries,
what the nature of the trade was.
Yeah, so he's no longer with the team. All right, no worries. That's all right.
He was in the RP team. He played some fall ball, which you guys are familiar with because of Mystic River.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, they eventually, I think they traded him away here somewhere in between ARP and now as we speak.
Gotcha. So, as you were saying earlier, not a lot of these guys that get drafted through the college route end up being huge impact players during the season. They're more, development guys and, depth and stuff like that, which is perfectly fine at this point. Eventually, as this thing continues to progress, we're going to see some immediate impact guys coming into this league. And I'm sure that NOLA will grab quite a few of those because they take the draft so seriously, as I was mentioning earlier. I wanted to ask you about, because there was another draft that we weren't really anticipating, the dispersal draft with New York and Toronto players. You guys drafted, I think, if not one of the most, if not the most of these dispersal draft picks. Any of these guys going to have an immediate impact?
Well, it was funny because the guy that was drafted that really made me light up was, of course, Nate the Great Augsburger. Right. He was in San Diego. I think I haven't spoken with him. I can't wait to speak with him. We kind of are cordial back and forth a little bit, but I haven't spoken with him personally since the final. But I'm interested in finding out why he made the move to New York. Was it, an attempt to get closer to his home city of Minneapolis? I don't know. But ultimately, when they picked him up, I was like, hey, great. That's a huge pickup, on the wing for NOLA Gold. Right. And then they traded away his rights to Chicago, and my eyes lit up even more. And I'm like, well, this kid can't go wrong.
Right.
But I think that's what happened is that, when things broke down in New York, he got picked up by NOLA, and I think NOLA called him, and they worked out a mutually agreed deal. And he said, hey, could I get my way up to Chicago so I'm a little closer to Minneapolis? And that's what happens. We're happy to have him here in Chicago for sure. I mean, for sure. I love that dude. So, I think some of these guys can, certainly. I think, was it, oh man, who am I thinking of? Because
did you guys get Jason Emery?
No, okay. Jason Emery's going to LA.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been picked up in the draft in the dispersal draft, but the guy who we got in the dispersal draft is Ed Fido. And he's a guy that's going to make he's going to make an immediate impact. I mean, that guy's lights out. He's a player. And it's in a place where they needed a little bit of depth at wing. I mean, you want your wings, like, there's a hallmark of a wing. You better be able to finish the damn play. Get into that corner, dot it down. pin your ears back, and that's Ed Fideau, and he has a strength, he has a skill, he has the the vision. We know that from New York. I mean, he's an all-star, and NOLA Gold are really going to be the beneficiaries of his services. So
100%.
it'll be good to see him on the wing.
Absolutely, a great finisher in this league. Kind of very similar to Paula Bellincana in that way. Like he knows how to dot that ball down in the corner, and he'll get it done. Bit of a shit house on the pitch sometimes. I remember last season we were down there in New York. He was kind of picking a little bit of a fight with our Mitch Wilson Iron Man, and we had none of that for sure. The Free Jacks really rallied around that little moment there. But for sure, man, like I mean, Nate Osberger would have been a good pickup for NOLA. I mean, like an all-star in this league, right? One of the best at his job, right up there. And also, like, interesting, he transitioned from scrum half to wing and had an amazing year in 2023. Got to the final. Unfortunately, their boys didn't get it done. Fortunately for the Free Jacks, of course, winning that 1-point victory. But I mean, for you, it's kind of cool. Like he was going to go to NOLA, which would have been nice, but he ends up in the Hounds, which is also nice. I mean, you win either way in that scenario, which is pretty cool. But
unfortunately, brought us Minneapolis weather with him, but we'll excuse that for the moment.
We got our first significant snowfall a couple days ago. I guess that's why I feel like I'm in the X Games wearing this beanie, but it is what it is. Talk about some of these new signings and retained players for NOLA Gold that Rangers should be aware of.
Well, yes, there's some interesting ones. Well, so, and I'm going to go down the list kind of quickly. Sam Buckley, he's actually a college draftee, another LU player, so somebody near and dear to my heart, a prop. It'll be interesting. Again, Fitz loves to invest and develop American front rowers. Now, Bucks is not an American by birth, but he came up through the university system in the United States, so he's kind of a pseudo-American. He loves to develop those guys. He was actually a draftee by Utah, and then he's found his way into NOLA. Isaac Solomon, Isaac is Tasman, Hawke's Bay, NPC guy, so expect their front row to be bolstered by him. You had the exit of Dino Waldron.
All right, yep.
James Doc Iray is going to be around, but he's still finishing his naval service, so he was actually living in Va Beach for a little bit. But he's going to be down there for training camp and going to find his way, kind of like a medical joker, I think, and help out a little bit. But it's good to have a guy like Isaac Solomon come in. And Bert Vermillion, Connacht, OGDC guy. So I think they took a step in the front row in my mind. A couple guys coming back into that front row who have been out of the mix for a year, young guys that I still think can develop. Then he got Augusto Bone from 6-cap Chilean with the Jackals and Sunwolves. Again, he brings some experience, international experience amongst other things. Colin Botcher, 2 caps for Rugby Canada, Pacific Pride guy. Olajuwon Noah, who Fitz really likes him a lot. 5 caps for Samoa, played for the Sharks. One thing that's interesting is I looked at these new guys, a lot of them are like 28 or younger. So, you got to figure that they're still kind of in that prime spot where they're, not young guys that still need to develop. They're guys that are, right in the heart, in the
that's
meat
the sweet
of
spot.
that sweet spot. This is a guy I think he's 34. So he's a little bit long in the tooth, especially for a back rower, but he comes with tons of experience. So it's good to have him. Jonah Ma'au, Moana Pacifica, Northland, one of the top 5 in the NPC, one of the top 5 turnover rates, in Mitre 10, top 5 turnover rates. So he's a poacher. And I think he's going to be a welcome addition to the back row. Domingo Saavedra, 28 caps for Chile.
Wow.
They're again a Selknam guy, so he comes with a ton of international experience. Dorian Jones, his comes from a pedigree in Wales. If you know anything about Kingsley Jones, it's his dad.
Incredible.
He's a kind of utility, a 10-15, but he'll probably, be able to slotted at 10, probably more of a 15 to give Dougie a break, or to kind of come in as a utility guy because he can play in some places. We talked about Fedot, we talked about Robert. So those are the new guys. I think they really stepped up in a lot of areas that they needed to. And what I like about this roster, their scrum halves and their 10s are well established. They are now all been together in their second year. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that connection should be more solidified this year.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm hearing some encouraging things about these guys, the new guys, and also the retained guys that you've brought in here. And it's just kind of interesting because I'm kind of in the same predicament as last year where I'm feeling good about the NOLA Gold. You do a very great job of convincing me that I should think that NOLA's going to be better than I anticipate. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. But some really, really good additions there for sure. And obviously you guys have a decent squad to begin with. Like Rodney Iona is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
And of course, I did a little a post, as I like to do, a little video today in regards to Dougie Fife in last year's NOLA Gold uniform with the whole vomiting thing. It's just one of those things where, like, he played for Mystic, which was unbelievable. I'm sure that they loved him there in the ARP season in earlier, whenever that was at this point. Yeah. And I felt like, maybe he would just hang around Boston because I know his girlfriend is in Boston, but he's on the roster.
Yeah. Did you know that he was coaching Mystic River in sevens?
I did know that. Yep.
It was funny because I was up, my son was playing for the Bombers, who got second this year in the nation and nationals for sevens. Mm-hmm. And when I was up there for Nats in Madison, Wisconsin, I'm looking around and I see, Dougie Fife, and I'm like, God damn, that's Dougie Fife. And so I went up to him and I got a picture, and I was in, ironically, Hounds gear that day. So I wore Hounds gear on Saturday. Fortunately, I ran into Sam Harris, so I didn't disappoint him. And then Sunday, I wore NOLA gear. So
perfect.
I didn't disappoint the NOLA fans. But yeah, I ran into Dougie there. He's a good dude.
He is a good dude. Dougie's one of those guys, like, he finally came on the show. I had to coax him a little bit in terms of getting on the show finally, but we had Bubs Kane, who is the head coach of Mystic, able to join him in that because we talked about the ARP and him being a part of that, which is really, really cool. So Dougie Fife knows who I am. A Six Nations tri-scorer knows who I am. It's crazy to think about. But yeah, great guy. Unfortunate that he's not with the Free Jacks, but it kind of is what it is. I mean, he's in his last year of his contract right now. Maybe we'll pick him up next year. We'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, very, very exciting stuff. I wanted to ask you, we like to ask all of our correspondents that come on here, will you be finally making the trip up to Massachusetts to experience the madhouse that is Fort Quincy when the Gold Squad marches up?
Well, we don't really know when that's going to be now, do we?
That's true. That's true. We know that the new schedule is coming. I know that they want to keep as many dates the same as possible, but that's not going to work, really.
From what I've gathered, my sources tell me that basically what you're going to see, and I've gotten this from two different places, by the way, so I can confirm that this is probably pretty much so, that whatever dates that teams have their home games, those dates are going to pretty much stay the same. There might be a few changes, one or two changes with a team or two. Those are pretty much going to stay the same, of course, because most teams have they share space with another entity, and so they kind of had to lock in those dates, right? Yep. What you may see is a different team be inserted on those dates in the schedule. So that's what I'm gathering, right? I don't know if I would love to make it up to Quincy. It's a quaint place to play. Part of my problem as a teacher, I have trouble getting away for the weekends until school is out, just because, I can't take the advantage of nice, easy fares. And I can't just take a vacation day. We don't get those. We already have vacation days. It's called summer and winter break.
Right. Yeah.
So I have to play within that schedule. And it just so happens that, this year, if the schedule holds true to what it was, my goal was to get down for the Hounds game in New Orleans and then go watch the Hounds play in DC, because my brother lives in DC. So I have a free place to stay and I owe him a trip, truth be told. I haven't been out to his house in a long time. So I put a priority on getting out there and seeing either NOLA or DC play, depending on when they're out there.
Fair enough. Might have to wait another year for the Hammer to visit Fort Quincy,
Yeah.
but it's going to be great. Like, definitely top 2 fan atmospheres in the entire league
No, for
at this
sure.
point with Fort Quincy. So it's kind of like a pilgrimage for all of you MLR correspondents to come visit. Brian Ray did last year, Rick Collins did last year. So yeah, definitely got to get. And of course, Scott the Big Guy Ferrara, who team no longer exists, unfortunately, has made the trip a couple of times to see the Free Jacks play at Fort Union
Yeah.
Point, I believe it was. I don't know if he ever got to Fort Quincy, but we'll have to see how that shakes out. Did he name a team at this point?
No, he hasn't named a team, although I
Wow.
think I know who it is, but he's
Okay.
kind of keeping that. He had to get through the national championship
Of
for
course.
college football because he's a Michigan guy. So
I know,
he had to
yeah.
get through that. Let him enjoy the hangover a little bit, and then
Sure.
we'll make him make a decision very soon.
As long as it's not DC, I'm going to be happy, I guess. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. But let's see here. Oh, I was gonna say that when the first schedule came out, I was a little bummed because there was no away New Orleans game after
Mm.
the Free Jacks. I really wanted to get down there. So they're going to be joining the East. So presumably, if we're doing the
Yeah,
whole
home and
home and
away. Yeah,
away, that
yeah,
will exist. I mean, if it's
yeah.
not too late in the season, I would definitely be interested. Of course, I'm going to Belfast. I don't know if you're aware of this. The Free Jacks
No,
Independent Squad is traveling to Belfast in May. So they're taking, their up and coming players, their development guys over to Belfast to play Ulster Academy. And I'm going to be there for 6 days, Hammer. So it's going to
nice.
be a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's a
So
good
that's my
trip.
big
That's a good
away
trip.
trip.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, I'd love to go to one more, special one, and New Orleans is definitely on my list. I've never been there. Super excited if that was to be able to come together. So you're aware of the Holden Youngert vampire curse. I think Bozo, if you weren't aware, Bozo made you aware of it in the comments not too long ago today, talking about how the vampire, Holden Youngert himself, every team he's played for, which is only NOLA and Neola and New England, whoever side he's playing for in that day wins the game. So, it's one of those crazy things.
Well, see, I put a hex on that hex.
Okay.
So it's the double hex, the
Uh-huh.
reverse hex,
Sure. Yep.
hex, and by taking a photo with him at the finals, Bozo didn't tell you that part. I took a photo with Holden Youngert. Gave him a big hug, congratulated him because what a great. I love that guy. So anyway, yeah, I reversed the reverse hex there. So I think we're good. I see. Dennis Terrio just gave a shout out there with Bayou Rugby.
Okay. Yep. There he is.
Great dude. He takes a lot of great photos, posts them for NOLA Gold, and makes it all. He takes pictures of both home and away teams. So
Cool.
hit up the Free Jacks and see if he can get his photos because he does a really awesome job with that stuff. Kudos to that man.
Absolutely. Glad he's able to join us for sure. Just a couple more things here for you, Hammer. What is your official way too early win-loss prediction for New Orleans Gold in 2024?
So last year I think I did 11-5, if I'm not mistaken.
Boy, that was optimistic, huh?
Yeah, that was optimistic. I'm gonna throttle it back a little bit, go 10-6. I still think they get in the playoffs. If it holds true with 8 teams making the playoffs, I got to be honest. Yeah. I think they should only have 6 teams make the playoffs.
I agree.
If they have 12. What they should do is the top 2 team. Now it can be the East and the West. Just have the top team in each side get a bye week that first week, do a round and run it in. So yeah.
I agree. Like, I think 8 is way too many. That's one of those things that I saw that, and normally I'm just like an MLR. Okay, I'm just glad that it exists. That type of thing. When I saw it, I was like, this is so Mickey Mouse bullshit, man. I understand revenue and stuff like that. You want to have playoff tickets to these teams that are starving for revenue, and all of that makes sense. But you lose legitimacy within your league if 8 out of 11, now 12 teams make it into the playoffs. Like, what are we doing here? And by the way, that first round of playoffs is going to be an absolute gas. Like, the top seed is just going to run over the lower seed in that situation. So it won't be enjoyable to watch. This isn't March Madness here, folks. So
The
Yeah.
only thing that gives me it'll be interesting because of the schedule's pushed back, and so the
Mhm.
final is what in like they think they penned August 8th or 7th or something like that for the
Something like
final.
that,
It'll be
yeah.
interesting to see how teams navigate through that international window at the beginning of July because
Mhm.
that butts you up right against you know that playoff hunt, right?
Right. Yeah.
They're going to take 2 weeks off at that time, but you know, if you have any players, if you have 4 or 5 players like Noah Goal and Moni
Mhm.
Tungawea and Cam Dolan and Matt Harmon and now you're talking about 3, 4, 5 guys that are in an international service,
Mhm.
playing those 2 weeks that a lot of other guys are getting rest. So it'll be
Yes.
interesting to see how teams navigate this. Obviously, with the Free Jacks only having 4 American players, it's probably not an issue. Just one of them being on the
Well, we're gonna have 2
the
now.
USA roster.
Well, there's 2 now because we've got Caleb Geiger, right? So that's 2 Eagles that will be flying off, from the Fort Quincy
Doubled your
nest.
tally.
Doubled the tally. There you go. And so if you're looking at it like that, the Free Jacks are doing fantastic with young American talent. We've got 2 Eagles now. So yeah.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
like
you got 3 because you got Kyle.
that's
Don't
right.
forget
Yeah.
about Kyle
So
Sakari.
obviously
He's
the nickname,
the
yeah, the
Eagle.
Eagle, exactly. So we've
Yeah.
got 3 Eagles on our roster now. So take that, all of you naysayers. And by the way, we have a shield to back it up with the success. So yeah, final thing here. Any closing thoughts for the Rangers out there, the hardcore Free Jacks fans? What do you have to say to them?
Oh, well, you guys had a great run. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys have a tremendous fan base, and I love the fact that the team itself, the Free Jacks, really do a nice job working with the fan base to deliver the goods and to make
Mhm.
Fort Quincy a place that fans experienced and new fans want to come to and visit.
Mhm.
The only thing I would say is, if you get an opportunity, you want to spend a couple extra bucks, go down there to New Orleans or come out to Chicago. You won't disappoint. Both cities are wonderful. There's a lot to
Mhm.
do. No matter which city you go to, it'll be a fun, enjoyable experience. It'll be a great place to watch some rugby and really have an entertaining weekend on the whole.
I can't speak for New Orleans, but I can speak now for Chicago with the final.
Yeah.
Fantastic city, man. I loved it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go back. That architectural boat tour, listen to me. Listen to your Uncle Philly right now.
Yeah.
If you've never been to Chicago
Yeah.
and you want to go to Chicago and be like, well, what am I going to do in Chicago? You have to take
Yeah.
the architectural boat tour. It is a 10 out of 10, highly
Yeah.
recommend. I would pay like $50 to $100 for that. I can't remember how much it was. It was less than that, but it's
Oh,
definitely worth
yeah.
every penny.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
done it twice, and I've actually done
So
2 different
good.
versions. So one of them actually goes out into Lake Michigan, kinda goes up to Navy Pier and comes back. The other one goes the other way down the river,
Mhm.
and, you actually get more of the architectural piece, and without question, it's a must do. And aside from
100%.
that, it's right there in the heart of the north, the north side of the city and
Mhm.
near North area. River North is what it's called actually, and it's a
Mhm.
wonderful place. A lot of Hounds guys lived up in that area last year, in
Very
that
cool.
River North area. Yeah,
Nice. So I saw you at the final before we get you out of here, and
yeah,
if you recall, I hugged you, because I
yeah.
was just so overcome with joy with the Free
As
Jacks
you should have
winning.
been. As
Yes,
you should have been.
I was over the moon and had a great time, and what a great memory that was, and, we'll always as Free Jacks fans, we'll always remember Chicago. We'll always have Chicago.
Yeah,
That's one of the things, like, where we feel good about this organization, but if times get low, we can always think about Chicago and say, "Man, what a great time that was." So, really appreciate the Hounds hosting that and really appreciate you being there. Very, very cool to meet you in person for that brief
yeah.
moment, but yeah, man. Thank you for what you do. You do a fantastic job on the Rugby Rant. You do a fantastic job here. And I've got one word to exit the video in 3, 2, 1. Huzzah!
Huzzah!